I want to make a sona. I'm tired of seeing all of you people have fun without me. Now, if you're not a chronically online person, a sona, which is short for persona, is the way that you fictionally represent yourself online. Although it can physically resemble you, usually it doesn't because we can be whimsical, cringe, and free. And this is always where I've struggled because whenever I've drawn myself, it usually looks somewhat like me and it's not really creatively interpreted. And since I am a fairly generic looking Asian girl with a bob, it's like, well, how are you gonna tell me from the next Asian girl with a bob, you know? And even though I consider myself to be a rather introspective person, there is something up here blocking me from being able to just like draw myself as a tomato with ears or something. You know what I mean? So we're gonna go through this process and figure out what is happening up there and how I really want to represent myself. And I just finished editing this video and let me tell you, there's some lunatic things in there, but hopefully it will be entertaining and helpful if you are also a person who struggles with overthinking literally everything about making art. So we're gonna go through this process from the ground up, and I'm gonna give you some tips and exercises even though it's probably not necessary, and all you need to do is do some very simple self-reflection. But for those of you who are also slightly emotionally repressed, this one's for you. Chapter 1 is about research, as is the first step in basically any bigger project. So the overall goal with this project is to create a character that represents me, a character that is going to represent like my presence online and be welcoming to viewers, just everyone who could possibly interact with me. And over here on the left, I've pasted some examples of how I've drawn myself in the past, and it's basically just all very accurate to how I look in real life. There's nothing like creative about it. I'm like not trying to interpret anything. I'm just like, yep, this is what I look like. So a lot of the questions I had in the beginning were like, if I had never put my face online, how would I represent myself? A lot of the best solutions are usually the simplest ones. My second question was like, if I were to add 1 or 2 elements to make me recognizable, what would it be? What aspects of my personality are important to showcase in this context? What distinguishes me from others? What type of character would I be in a fictional series? If you're older, how did you perceive yourself when you were younger? What are traits that you wish you had, and how would you cringe max yourself? So if you have absolutely no idea where to start, I would say questions like these are good to ask yourself just to sort of understand what kind of character you want to be. Although it can become very distracting in my opinion and get you down a rabbit hole of like symbols, themes, archetypes, none of which are really that actionable when you're trying to design a character for a brand. So here was my very first initial take on this subject. I tried to answer some of the questions, many of which happened to like be asking very similar things. So like what aspects of my personality are like distinguishable from others that I think, and how would I exaggerate myself? So I listed 3 traits which I thought were important. I am analytical, I have somewhat dry humor, and I am creative. This is important because this is for our brand. As an exaggeration, this type of character, fictional character, would have a god complex and would be completely delusional. That is the type of character that I quite enjoy, and so the energy that I would like to embody some more, because I think that over the years I've just become more and more grounded and disinterested in strange or lofty things, but I think that it is a core part of my personality that's sort of been lost. And traits that I wish I had or am working on, I want to be more courageous and have more initiative, and this is sort of represented by the tiger, which is the year of the zodiac I was born in. And I wrote, though I'm closer to a house cat, I would like to be a tiger, which could be a promising metaphor. So that was my very first initial take on this subject. I drew myself as a little tiger. However, there were problems with this because it felt a little bit too surface level, and I could think about like a lot of story that could surround this character, but it just didn't embody the type of character I wanted to put out to represent myself. It feels a little bit random, if you know what I mean. So aside from that, I also did a lot of looking into how other artists are representing themselves. Remember what I said about how Often the simplest solution is the best one. A lot of these artists are just adding one or two things to make them recognizable and to tell us what they're all about. For example, Mew Tripled here, all she does is have devil horns on her character, which looks like her, and she would wear devil horns in her videos. It's super recognizable, and it tells us that she is got sort of like a devious personality. Another funny example is Jaden. This is literally just the most generic stick figure character, but with big hair. And so Jaden is basically just known for big hair. Another interesting example is Draw Like a Sir, who teaches you how to draw online, obviously. His online avatar has this mask, and what I find interesting is that in real life, he can also wear a mask to mirror his fictional character representation. And some people forgo humanity entirely. For example, Inkwell has been using this really disturbing frog to represent him. You know what? Go off, King. He's decided that he is a whimsical frog with a wizard hat, and I respect that. And then PCat, very iconic persona. This tweet of hers says, "My aesthetic is failure core." So that's where I came up with the idea of like, how would you cringe max yourself? I find artists who like to draw themselves as losers very funny, and it indeed is highly relatable. But it also tells me that I probably don't want to do this because I would just like to represent myself a little differently. Like I said, the delusional god complex is speaking. All right, so you know where this is going, but if you too would like to brain dump like this in peace, allow me to pitch to you one of my genuinely most favorite creative organizational tools to use, Milanote. Milanote is a tool for organizing creative projects. It's an online canvas designed to help you plan, brainstorm, and collaborate on ideas. Now, I have been a Milanote user since 2021, and it's helped me on projects from story planning to character designing to business planning. For the project I'm working on today, I've created this board to organize all of my thoughts in one place. My goals and to-dos are in the center, and on the left I'm collecting images of how I've been drawing myself, along with questions and brainstorming about my personality. And on the right, I'm collecting research on how other artists have approached this topic, including their sonas and notes on similar YouTube videos about this topic. Milanote has been very helpful to my workflow because I can drag and drop images, videos, and links from anywhere on the internet and put them wherever I want. I do love that freedom. And if you do not want to drag and drop any links or copy and paste, they do have a web clipper that you can install as an extension, so you can save images directly from any web page. And if you're not sure where to start, Milanote has over 100 built-in templates for every type of creative project. For example, Illustration Design Brief gives me a lot of ideas for how to customize Milanote to my goals. If you're working with a friend or a team, you can also share the boards for them to comment on or edit as well. If you're an on-the-go type of person, Milanote has mobile apps for the phone and iPad, making it easy to work on your boards from anywhere. Or, as I like to use it, using it as a reference while I draw traditionally, or on the side on Procreate. If you're interested in trying Milanote out, it is free to sign up and there's no time limit to doing so. Create a free account with a link in my description and your next creative project will thank you. Chapter 2, Understanding the Base Model. So after all that research and my initial take with that tiger character, I felt like I was in a bit of a roadblock. I realized that adding random knickknacks to my head like tiger ears or devil horns was not gonna make me a persona that was actually representative of me. So I decided to go back to my roots and try to approach this problem in a more structured way that was going to guarantee some interesting results no matter what. So I decided to start with the base model, right? What is the base model? The base model is just you or me. I have to understand how I naturally want to approach drawing myself. And you might be like, oh, but Lexin, this is exactly what you wanted to avoid in the first place. And it's like, well, yeah, but we kind of have to start here in order to be able to iterate and stylize upon it. I can't really jump from realistic version of me to like, she's just a blob with cat ears now. I don't think that's how it works for someone like me anyway. So what I did is that I started with drawing how I view myself like all the time, right? This is basically what I wear every day, 24/7. My plaid flannel and my plaid skirt and some random t-shirt. However, after drawing this, I realized that this isn't how I am all the time, right? There are versions of me that wear different things, who have different attitudes, who interact with people differently. And so I started drawing myself in different outfits. The second outfit is something I would wear going out. And it's very important to note that how I act and how I think when I'm in this like fit and in this zone is how it was pretty different from how I act when I'm in my flannel and my plaid. And so I started thinking, okay, we all have these different characters that we embody on a day-to-day basis. I'm going to try to find a third one that is neither of the previous two. So my third one is a outfit I like to wear during winter. I really, really enjoy winter, and this is one of my favorite things to wear. Is like a really long, heavy trench coat, all bundled up, leg warmers, boots. I don't know, I just feel like wearing a trench coat, especially if it's like a more expensive one with higher quality materials, you automatically feel like whimsical, like maybe you're part of a dark academia book, or like you're just in a different vibe than usual. The fourth one is an outfit that I frequently wear when I am at a convention, and I also wore this outfit when I was traveling in Korea with a bunch of artists. And aside from those two instances, I don't really wear stuff like this. And so I would associate this outfit specifically with like being an artist and showing up as an artist, being creative. And then the last one, I'm gonna be honest with you, this one was just random because I was just looking through my camera roll trying to like remember what outfits I had been wearing. So if I wanted to really distinguish the last character from the previous four, I would say the last one is the student. Being a student was a big part of my identity, and how I thought and acted as a student is quite different from all of these previous four versions of me. So I would say this is a pretty enlightening exercise to do, because previously I was really only drawing and seeing myself as this first version, which I see every day. But when I started drawing all of these different versions that embody different ways that I show up and I act in the world, I realized that there are inherent characters that we play that we can tap into. And it explained why it always felt a little bit wrong to be drawing myself like in my basically pajamas, because I don't really want to be representing myself in my pajamas. Like I wouldn't go to a convention in my pajamas. So why am I showing up this way on YouTube? So if this seems like something you want to try out, I have articulated what this exercise would be, and it would be like exercise 1. Draw yourself. Draw at least 3 to 5 common outfits that represent different modes that you have in life. For example, lounging at home, perhaps something you commonly wear to work. If you do a sport, your like uniform or your gym outfit, what you wear when you're going out, what you wear when you feel creative, etc. Chapter 3 is to explore their personalities. So I have realized that there are different characters that I embody, and so the next step is to figure out what kind of expressions each one has and like how their distinct personalities manifest, and paying special attention to what kind of expressions feel natural to you to draw on yourself and what kind of expressions you might avoid drawing on yourself. When I first started doing this exercise, I wasn't yet distinguishing like the different outfits as different characters, and so I was just drawing different expressions as me. And generally I am a very like unexpressive person in real life. If I feel something on the inside, I rarely express it on the outside, and like kind of vice versa. And so after a certain amount of time, I was really hitting a roadblock again, in which that I was really trying to draw expressions that I would physically make. But the point of this exercise is to explore expressions that are not obvious on the surface, creating characters from parts of you that don't appear obvious on the surface. Just think about like if you're in a certain situation and you're like screaming in your head, but your face is completely impassive. Or you like have a little bit of attitude reacting to some things that happen in real life, but none of it really shows on your face. You want to draw the feeling of having attitude instead of like what your face actually looks like when that's happening. Because if you do, it's just going to be like a poker face. So this first batch of expressions is what I would categorize as like common expressions day to day that I would make. And I was looking at this like, how is it possible that the only 4 expressions that I have are neutral, questioning, yaoi, and cat? Like that does in fact encompass every emotion that would appear on my face, but I have such a wide range of like internal expressions as well. So that's when I decided to move on to this art character. And I was like, okay, if this is the creative character, I'm going to draw her expressions, like expressing what I internally feel about art or what I wish I felt about art. And so this is like sort of my internal artistic voice. If I had to describe this character, she is the part of me that is very passionate about art. She is loud and intense. And whenever I lose motivation or interest in art, she is there trying to drag me back out any means necessary. For me, this is really helpful to distinguish from the default me, because the default me is rather passive and lazy and uninterested in working, I'll be honest. But the part of me who is passionate about art is like, bitch, get your ass up. What the hell? Art is fun. And even if it's not fun, like, are you gonna quit? Are you gonna quit right now? Quit right now, I dare you. Okay, you're not gonna quit? Then get your ass up. Those drawings aren't gonna draw themselves. And if you can't do it, I'll help you. I'll drag you by the hair. We're going. So that's kind of her attitude. This is like the treatment I get every day of my brain. And I kind of need this like insane character to keep me company, or else I just won't get up and move. So some questions for you, if this seems interesting to you, just to articulate once again what I said earlier. Like, how do you naturally want to depict yourself? Are there expressions you avoid drawing on yourself? Are there emotions that you feel deeply on the inside but don't express outwardly? And like I said before, this is helpful for me because if I viewed myself as like a single entity, a single personality, then I would just like perpetually be in my pajamas state. I would be like, I'm just a lazy, procrastinating, brain rotty like person. I just want to live a chill life, and that's just who I am. But that's just not true. And there is a part of me that is like, get your ass up and work, and we want to make crazy cool things. But that part of me is just not always present. So I actually feel comforted by dividing myself up in this way. And I feel like it's a little bit hard to advise on this specific thing because I haven't really seen anyone design a sona in this specific way. But I can picture a wide variety of art sonas, if you will. Like some people's might be very peaceful and zen, or playful, or academic, or friendly, or even lazy and chill like Picat's is. Mine just happens to think that art is a matter of life and death. Like if you've ever read or watched Blue Lock and seen those panels where it's like, what the hell? There's no way that this is about soccer. Like they're so serious about it, and that's like how I feel about art. So that is what this character embodies. And I think I really started to get there with these expressions. All right, chapter 4 is about design iteration. So now we figured out the personality and the attitude of this character, but they still look just like me. So I want to make that a little bit more thought out, a little bit more distinct. And I feel like this is where I have to stop trying to give advice to you, because it's like, at this point, be free. You should know what direction you want to go to based on the personality of this character that you've just arrived at. For me, I was thinking about how the simplest solutions are often the best. So if this is an artist character, how do I sort of visually design that? And I was like, okay, artists I create with my hands. So let's do something interesting with the hands of this character. What can I do that is art related, but also like hand and arm related? And I was saving all sorts of inspiration to Pinterest, and I remembered that like drawing models exist, like the little wooden guys. I had one of those when I was a kid. I didn't really use it that much, but it's like an iconic representation of being an artist. And so I was like, okay, I'll replace one of my arms with that wooden drawing model arm. And then I was like, that still doesn't really cover my entire like artistic personality, because a lot of visual indications of art, like if you just search artist aesthetic, it's a lot of like traditional art. It's like paints and dirty aprons and palettes, and I'm like, okay, I'm not really that much of a traditional artist. I'm much more of a digital artist, and technology is a big part of how I create art. And so I was like, okay, how about my right hand is the wooden doll hand, and my left hand is a cyborg arm, because the left arm and hand, when I'm drawing, I draw with my right hand, and my left hand is on the keyboard, pressing all the keyboard shortcuts. So I was like, okay, I started to feel excited. I was like, okay, this actually starts to make sense. These two aspects of me are really important when I'm making art, and neither can be divorced. So I started to iterate upon that, just figuring out how much of the arm should be wooden or metal, what the cyborg arm should look like. And I'm honestly not going to think too hard about this aspect right now, because it's like, if the arms are like non-human, then they can be interchanged. So like if I fail to follow my established design, then it just means she switched her arms out, and that could make sense. So I tried a lot of different versions with like, should she have long sleeves, short sleeves? Should the dress actually be an apron that has like paint on it? Should her eyes have some sort of mechanical design to them? Anyway, like just normal design iteration idea thoughts. And this character does still look like me in the face, but I think that's okay, because I mean, at this point, I've already shown my face so many times. It'd be really weird just to like completely pivot to a different character entirely. And the important part about this is that she's still a human in the core. Human in the core, but the tools that she uses to create are now transformed into references to how she creates. The final touch was to add a little tie, because it's still a little bit professional, you know, like this is my work. I don't really want to show up in a t-shirt. So like the tie is a little fun indication that's like, okay, this is kind of my job. So we're here to do business. And I would say I am very pleasantly surprised that we ended up here. I did not expect to actually end up with a design that I am interested in. The last chapter is going to be about world building, and I was thinking about this aspect specifically because when I hear sona, I don't really think about like a personal sona first. For me, it was always associated with people creating like a character to fit into another world. A good example is like a spider sona. When people would create their own version of Spider-Man to put into the like Spider-Verse, or you would like create a Harry Potter sona, like a version of yourself that would go to Hogwarts or exist in that world. So when creating like a personal sona, this is also where my brain goes to. I'm not just designing the character, I'm also designing the entire world that they inhabit. When I was first thinking about the concept of the art sona, I was thinking about like, in this world, probably like a lot of people are artists, right? In the same way that in the Spider-Verse, there are a lot of spider people. But we all have different like powers, like art-related powers or art-related quirks, fantastical character building elements as well. But that is kind of a tangent, and I wanted to focus this chapter specifically on how I'm going to try to build out the world of this character. So in the past, I've made a few videos with like example dummy characters that I just gave names and personalities to, called Bob and Mark. Well, in order to talk about character interactions, we will need characters. So let's create two little guys. Let's say they're called Bob and Mark. Just two guys hanging out. Bob and Mark have their own lore and the people love them. The people love Bob and Mark. And so I was thinking Bob and Mark are already part of my lore, my artistic lore. And I can definitely use the concept of these guys who are basically just like mannequins or my little puppets who have their own personalities and give those to my art sona. So I've decided to draw this image of her dressing up Bob and Mark. Can you guess which one is which? In some clothes, because I basically just use these two to demonstrate how to draw things. So I guess in this example, we would be dressing them up to practice drawing clothes. So I imagine that she probably has like an entire army of like little mannequins that she sort of like bosses around and just uses for artistic purposes. And I suppose this is sort of a callback to the earlier chapter where I was like, if I had to really exaggerate part of my personality, it would definitely have like a god complex. So I would say in this sort of setting, she is basically God over these drawing mannequins. But, you know, it would be interesting to develop this world even more. Like, they're not just my underlings to boss around. They also have their own stories and desires and motives as well. And so if I had to ask you a question, if you're interested in designing a sort of art sona, if you haven't already, like what kind of power do you think your artistic self would have? I was thinking about Sai from Naruto because he can just draw things and they come to life and fight for him. I was also thinking about a sort of like domain expansion from like Jujutsu Kaisen where you can draw or imagine your entire environment to be a certain way and like defeat enemies that way. Maybe your character can become digital, like they're 3D, but they can enter the digital space and become 2D, like the animations I sort of see time to time again, where like people will animate a character interacting with the interface of a drawing program or editing program. I was also thinking about a character who might be sort of a healer, like they can go into people's heads and fight their demons, like their creative demons, with art-related attacks. Like, I don't know, the possibilities are endless. I think there is such an interesting range of like art sona world building possibilities out there. Maybe I'll host like a draw this in your style, but you just design your own character sort of thing. All right, so that was the video. I made my very first sona. It certainly won't be the last time you're seeing this character or her world. I always think by the end of these things that I have just like deconstructed creativity and just put it back together, and it was the most obvious freaking result ever, and that everything I said would be incredibly obvious to people who are like really in touch with their creative side. But I feel like for me, it is difficult to actually activate my creativity. You know, a little bit emotionally repressed. This is how I have to trick myself into expressing something, is to do it through a character. But if it works, it works. Thank you to my YouTube members. You guys are awesome. I will see you all in the next video. Sorry for not posting last month. Whoops.
Wow.